little voice said we're recording now, so it must be official.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll cover all kinds of stuff, so I'm not doing proper intros. So thanks everyone who's watching this and has found this, and thank you, Sal, for taking part in my first one of these, or one of the first ones. We talked ages ago about doing this. And what I wanted to do with these conversations is kind of cover the kinds of things gay men need to know, either gay men who are in the fight or who haven't yet been peaked. So that's kind of stuff I want to talk about, but there's a whole load of other things that I'm sure we'll get to. So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, I'm sure most people who have found this will know who you are. Do you want to give a quick couple of lines about who you are for anyone who doesn't know?
Yes, I'm obviously not a gay man. I'm not one of those women. My name's Sal, and I founded an app launched in 2020 called Giggle, that is female only, which thrust me into this world of gender ideology that I had no idea that existed, because I dared to do something that was just for women. And apparently that's the worst thing that you can do right now, because of the males of the world who have convinced themselves, and it's been reiterated by certain parts of society, that they are also women. So I had to get educated very, very quickly, and I was mortified by what I was seeing. And a big part of that was the homophobia. And I'd never tweeted or anything like that, because I saw the abuse and just the sort of the cesspool that it was, which is in part why we created Giggle, is for women to have a refuge, an online refuge away from that cesspool. But I found that I was in a situation that from creating this app, I had to use Twitter because I had to have a place to correct the lies that were being told about me and my company. And media wasn't helping me because they were joining in the pylon that I'm transphobic and racist and bigoted and whatnot. So yeah, so I now spend a disgustingly large portion of my workday dealing with men, despite the fact that I run a company for women. Yeah. But men have found a way to make their supposed oppression of not being women a problem that I have to deal with constantly.
So about probably just over 10 years ago, I ran kind of gay professional networking events in London. It's like various kind of in-house LGBT, or back then might have been just LGB networks within businesses and stuff. And then there was various kind of city drinks kind of things. So I ran one of those, and also ran, as part of that, a speed dating event called 28 Gays Later. There was like a nicer version of gay speed dating, essentially, rather than like dingy nightclubs. It was like nice restaurants, that kind of thing. But through various people I kind of knew. So the general networking events were open to men and women. 95% is men who go to those things, and even in the in-house stuff, it seemed to be mostly men who went to the gay networking things. But there was a lesbian couple who ran a similar thing just for women, and we were talking about running speed dating event with the format I was using, but with their mailing list and whatever. And it never transpired, because they knew they would just have men book on, because even at their general networking events for lesbians, men would buy tickets and just turn up in a kind of I'm sure I can convince at least one of them. Yeah, and that was 10 years ago, so I can't imagine how weird it is now, given the identifying.
I knew nothing about this. I mean, obviously, I knew that transsexuals existed, and I actually have always been friends, as majority of us that are in this and speaking out about this. We've all had and have transsexual friends, so that's part of the shock that we're experiencing and why we're speaking out, because it's like, no, these are very different people that we're dealing with at this moment. But we had the foresight when we were developing the app. We knew that men would try and get on, because of course they would, it's for women. Yeah. And the only way in reality, that like in a digital space, that you can gatekeep it is with images, with photos of yourself, with a selfie. And so that's what we've used as our gatekeeping mechanism. It's monitored by human beings 24/7 to make sure that the AI software is working as it should. We have it set to 95% accuracy, and it does work exactly how it should, to 95% accuracy. And I mean, I can't even remember the amount of thousands in one day, the record that we have. It's something like, it's over 10,000 in a day of men trying to get on.
Wow.
But it's constant. And they send dick pics, which I don't talk about too often because I don't want to encourage it any more than we already get it, because I think I may have the largest collection of dick pics in the world at this point. And so, yeah, it's a catch-22 in a way, because having the gatekeeping that we have, I know that for some men, it's just like, oh, let's just see if I can get past it. And for sometimes that might just be a little bit innocent of just like, might even be just looking at it from a tech perspective of, oh, does this work? But then you've also got like sort of the trolling sort of one. So, but if we did not have it, it wouldn't be a female-only app.
Yeah.
It's just, it's crazy. I mean, and like my thing is, and I know that, like, and we can talk about this, I know that the world of Grindr, for example, has changed, and who is on there has changed. But for like the first 10 years or so of Grindr, or however long, let's even say the first 5 years, it was basically male only. I mean, it was an app for gay men. And I mean, it would have never have occurred to me to go on it.
Yeah, I think there's I'm not a Grindr user for a while. I've been back on and to look how much it's changed and have these sorts of conversations. And I know there's a big thing a couple of years ago where you couldn't filter by race or ethnicity anymore. They can put that in your details. They took that out as a big thing around obviously not filtering out by that, which is a positive move. But now they have tribes that you can put yourself into, and one of those was trans. I think that's been around for a while. So you could previously you could search for people who had identified themselves as trans in terms of one of the profile categories. You can search by height and weight, but you can't search by gender identity. But now you can have, I think there's always been definitely on Grindr and Gaydar, as it was on the website, pre Grindr, before apps and mobile phones. There would be either straight curious men, or men on the down low, or just men who outwardly, the terrible phrase, straight acting, but were into men, or might have been bisexual, who would go on to apps and that kind of stuff, and you don't have to put a profile picture on and whatever. So there's always been that. And I think there are the whole fascination of transsexual as a porn category for some men has been a thing. So I think there's been that on things like Grindr, but now it's you can register and you can put, I am a female who identifies as a female, and go on Grindr. And now, because they're an LGBTQ app, it's kind of, what does it mean anymore? So yeah, I think
my thing is, even from a business perspective, I'm like, so it's just Tinder now? Like, what's the point of difference?
Yeah.
There's a huge market, there's a huge gap in the market right now. Someone needs to create an app strictly for gay men. And I really hope that that someone does soon, because maybe I'm sexist in how I think about all of this, but I think it's men who are going to finally be listened to. I'm not sexist, I'm a realist. It's men who are going to be listened to.
Yeah.
And so it's the more gay men who speak up, the better, because let's be honest, lesbians raised the alarm in the 90s. They haven't been listened to, and everything they've said has come true.
I think it's definitely that's, for me, that's part of one of the things with this for me, and the kind of trying to reach what I've decided calling the pre-peaked, but the kind of the gay men who are, I mean, not the really embedded in the kind of Stonewall ideology type of gay man, but the going along with it because, like I've chatted to you on DMs about a friend of mine who completely shut me out, and then he's kind of had various stuff on Twitter, but he's just campaigning for the team, and he's only ever thought about protecting the team, and now trans is part of the team, and it's like, do you really believe it? And there's like another kind of layer of gay men who haven't really engaged with it at all, but if you talk to them about, like there was the video this week that someone's like kind of gay YouTubers put out about how to have oral sex with trans men. And it's like,
I've been looking at that today. I haven't watched the video. I won't.
No.
I'm not.
I mean, there's a reaching gay men, because I think within the LGB or LGBT side of, or sphere of the gender debate, it is going to be the gay men who are who kind of, because it doesn't directly affect them, or if it does, it doesn't affect them in the way that it affects lesbians. It's not a physical threat in the way it is.
Yes.
The threat is different.
That being said, there is one physical threat to gay men, and that is, I can't remember which organization in the UK that put out that pamphlet, but it was talking about trans-identified females basically going in stealth to like sort of the bathhouses and everything and performing oral sex on men, not having anything done to them in return. So there was no way of anyone knowing that they don't have a penis, basically. Yeah. And I was like, that's rape.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That is rape. That is females raping men. Something that society has not had to really ever deal with in major way. I'm sure there are obviously cases occasionally, blah, blah, blah. But so we're just making sexual assault more of a thing.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So it's that kind of, what are the, I've chatted to some gay men about this, and it's something I want to do more of, and with these sorts of conversations on the channel, what are the sorts of things that gay men need to know? Because I think gay men will be used to or aware of, what's been described as the transsexuals of old, the kind of the really effeminate gay men who, present as a woman and everyone refers to her as she, and actually it's a minority. It's kind of what the Gender Recognition Act was originally, that minority group to kind of talk that's so far removed from the lobby that is now, and most gay men don't get that.
Well, for me, why I was oblivious to it, and I was so shocked when I found out. My experience, say, with transsexual men had been, I moved to Hollywood to be a screenwriter in 2009, and I lived in West Hollywood. I lived like literally on the border of Boys Town in West Hollywood. So it was I loved living there so much. I lived just off Santa Monica Boulevard, around all the gay bars, and it was the safest place to live. There was a lot of single, like young, early 20s single girls who lived in this area, because it was the two other like demographics in the area were obviously like gay men and Orthodox Jews. It was because the temples were also close to there, and so it was just the safest place for us to live. It was so beautiful and lovely, and we used to go to gay bars all the time just for drinks, because the drink specials, blah blah blah, like they were our local bars, and there would always be transsexual men there who were, in my experience, always older. They had always they'd had like their a hard life in their like 20s, 30s, sometimes even 40s. But now they just have like this amazing sort of sense of humor about themselves, and they knew exactly who they were, and they were very fine with it. They'd gotten to that point of like, I'm just me, deal with it.
Yeah.
And I found their attitude to be really empowering and inspiring. I really liked chatting with them and hearing their journey. And they just knew that at the end of the day, they were men wearing women's clothing.
Yeah.
They were and you wanted them to live in a world where no one discriminated against them because of that. Because I've always looked at it in the way that like women fought for the right to be able to wear pants. Not for the right of that to mean that we were men, but we got the right to wear pants. So, why would it be any different of like men getting the right to wear dresses and that not being a problem? I was like, seems really reasonable to me.
The other, like talking about that kind of who was at the gay bar a decade, 20 years ago, as well as kind of the transsexuals we've just been talking about, the kind of the young, more so younger gay men, particularly, exploding out of the closet. Everything is pink and glittery and girly and all the other stereotypes you could describe it as, but they were gay men and all those things. And that even that group, it seems to have shifted from that means something more now in terms of what's your gender identity, because you like sparkly things.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's one of my friends here in Australia. There's a guy sort of on the outskirts of her friendship group, sort of an acquaintance of hers, who has just started his transition, and according to he claims to be, I think, bisexual, but she's only ever seen him with women. but so I think he's 3 weeks now into his transition because he is a woman, has always been a woman, blah, blah, blah. And so he's documenting it on Instagram, and she's been sending it to me to watch, because you kind of just can't believe that it's even happening. Because I would say how he's dressing is actually how, in like the early, like late 90s, early 2000s, how like these sort of really effeminate gay men would dress.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of something kind of cute about like his outfits, or something not shocking, I suppose. It's like, yeah, cool, but 20 years ago, 30 years ago, guys were dressing like this. But he's saying things like, oh, so I'm like a week on estrogen, and now the only thing that's really changed is now I'm crying and like while watching romantic comedies more. And it's like, well, if that's what you think it is to be a woman, why haven't you always been crying at romantic comedies?
I think that the affirmation by meeting a stereotype thing is something that, looking back, it's like, why didn't I see that sooner? So before I was in London, I was in Lincoln after university, and was part of essentially as the project manager for Lincolnshire Pride Festival for the 1 year, and kind of worked with various other different groups. And there's I can't remember what the name of it is, what they are now, but there was a group of kind of a trans group. I can't remember now if they would have called themselves transsexual or transgender, but they were older men who dressed as women, went by women's names, but weren't all the time. So one of them, I think Belinda is how we all knew him, would do like, prison visits, and had like a whole, in terms of their day job, and obviously wouldn't go into the prison as Belinda. And the rest of the time, but these were like sat with their legs apart, and as if they had a pint, and it's like, but what they were wearing was very like the kind of stripper, hooker, porn star look woman.
To me,
like, how was it not more obvious that that's what it was about for them?
Yeah, but I also like, I'm not overall. I mean, I am now offended by like the outfits and things like that, and like sort of why I brought up like the other guy that sort of we're watching his transition is because like back once upon a time I was never offended by like gay men dressing in like these sort of sparkly or effeminate things. That doesn't bother me. I think that that's fantastic. Even like some of the transsexual men, where there would be like the little mini skirts and the fishnets and blah blah. I was always like, it's just not my style. I don't like that on anyone. Like, I wouldn't like it on a woman either. So I didn't really care. I was like, just anyone can in this context can do whatever they want. And I still don't care. What I'm so bothered by in this though, is that I'm being told that I have to lie. Like one of the things that I left out of like my introduction is I've had an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint against me from a trans-identified male who wants to use Giggle. And it's like, you're a 50-something-year-old man and you want to use an app called Giggle, which like, yes, I mean, we have 50-something-year-old women on the app, but it's for women. And I've seen this person with my own eyes. This is a male person. And I have to be able to have the human right to acknowledge that. This is really important. And it's important for everyone. It's important for men to be able to acknowledge who's in front of them, and for women to, and for trans people to be able to acknowledge who's in front of them. And so I don't have the Australian Human Rights Commission on my side. I've refused to go to conciliation because to go, I would have had to, basically to resolve it in conciliation, I would have had to agree to allowing all males who identify as women onto the app, making sure moderating the app in a way as not to offend any of them, and going to sex and gender re-education. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing any of this sort of stuff. This is crazy because I know the difference between sex and gender. I'm so educated on it. In fact, that's all I'm doing with my time at the moment. And I think how gender expression and what you want to dress, or even if it makes you feel better every day to get out of bed and say to yourself, I'm a woman, if you're male, or if you're female, I'm a man. If that makes the day easier for you, say it. I don't care. All power to you. I only have a problem if you're forcing me to believe it. And
I think those extremes, or it's the view of it having to be extreme. So I think the shift that gay men and population at large, but particularly gay men, haven't realized is that 10, 20 years ago, those men that I was talking about weren't expecting you to actually believe they were women.
No.
I've referred to them as she and Belinda and whatever it was, because
Yeah.
they weren't expecting to be legally accepted as women. That was kind of how they presented. Whereas now the shift,
They just wanted to be themselves. They,
Yeah.
that was just accept me for just who I actually am. And it was like, of course, totally fine. That's how everyone, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Accept me for who I am.
Yeah. But the kind of activist view of it now is because we are saying you can present however they don't see the nuance of, it's not even nuance, it's just the reality of you can dress and present however you like, but you aren't physically changing your sex, and therefore you're not legally entitled to the things that the opposite sex is. They see that as then you shouldn't exist at all. And it's
one of the ideas that has come into my head just recently, and I'm still sort of working out like the finished thought of it. But basically what I'm starting to think, like, just say either through medicine and science or somehow natural evolution made it that human beings could, throughout the course of your life, change sex. That on a chromosomal level, everything changed. Yeah, it still wouldn't negate the rights and needs of people who didn't.
Yes.
So it would still, you would still have homosexual people who still weren't attracted to somebody who had been female or been male, you know what I mean? And you'd still need sports for people, for women's only sports for people, and women's only spaces to be away from the male socialization that had existed in that person's history. So I'm just like, on any level, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Had you kind of, I kind of want to make notes because like, oh, I want to ask you about this, I want to ask you about this, but try not to interrupt too much. Kind of pulling it back slightly to so before you kind of launched and were developing Giggle, so you were expecting men to try and get in, but were you expecting it to be because they were saying they were women, or was it just
No, I just thought it's like a few sort of like assholes, like kids who do, like, just like whatever, like just people out there, like just guys. Well, because we knew like guys would try and get on in the sense that if they didn't try to get on, you sort of, is there a need for it in that way? You know what I mean? Like that's sort of part of it. Like, and so we just knew that some guys would. I will say this though, not the demographic I thought. Like things like I'm like this lefty liberal girl who, to the point where like with my, I wouldn't have even called myself center left. I would have called myself pretty firmly left. Now I would say I'm center left, but I'm still my center right dad and I have had huge political debates for the last 20 years of my life. And he's always called me this like little liberal hippie. And I am now, and one of his things he would always say to me is like, the left eats their own. And I'd be like, oh, you just bitter old man. They ate me. They literally did. All of the media publications that I have spent my entire adult life reading will not, either won't respond to me or have called me a transphobe. It is devastating. It just, when we were creating Giggle and who I thought would be, in terms of institutions and organizations who I thought would partner with us, who would be excited, who would pump it up, are the ones who hate it. And then, it's like I've been on GB News in the UK, which is very similar, like, and I go on Sky News here and these are like sort of a Fox News type platform. I never thought I would go. Like even just 2 weeks ago, I was on Sky News here, and there's this comment. The host of it is a man named Andrew Bolt, and he wanted to have me on to talk about the human rights complaint. And afterwards, my mom said, she was like, "That was the stiffest, most awkward interview you've done." I'm like, "Yeah, because I've never liked this man. I'm so grateful he's given me a platform, but for the last, 10, 15 years, I've really not liked him." And now I've got to speak to him because he's given me this platform, and I'm internally grateful for it. But I'm having trouble getting my head around the fact that all of these media people who I really respected are the ones that are now calling me a TERF and shaming my company and really and celebrating that I have a human rights complaint. So just when we were developing Giggle, what I was expecting and what the reality has been are completely different things, except for the female users. They're all exactly what we thought. We got that part right. That's
about the kind of media side of it. Like I've been a member of the Labour Party and the Green Party in the past, and would describe myself as left, potentially even progressive left at one point, until progressive meant something else.
Just on that, just really quickly, Lionel Shriver, who's just like such an amazing writer, she has a thing, and I never thought about it this way because I've always called myself progressive as well, and just thought it was such a positive word. She says you can progress forward into like a pit. She's like, progress forward does not necessarily mean you're going in the right direction. And I was like, well, that's really true. Like, what that is being called progressive right now, because it just isn't. It's completely regressive. But sorry, go on.
It makes me think of the I don't know if you know watch any of Bill Maher, American.
Yes, I've always watched Bill Maher. Yeah.
Talks about how like he hasn't changed, but where left and right has shifted, and now he's like the left has gone so far left. I think is that a reaction to the right going crazy right.
He's been saying this a lot lately. I find it really interesting because I do find that you can, if you insist that too much of like, I haven't changed, you can become a little bit of a conservative then by definition, because you're sort of becoming a traditionalist in a way. You're not moving forward at all. I wouldn't say that I haven't changed. I would just say that what I'm being told is the truth has changed.
Yeah.
And the truth, like there's just some things that don't change. Like, like the earth is round, gravity is gravity, and males and females are males and females. These are just, they're not going to change. And like, there's lots of things about myself and reality and everything that I would love it if it was different. And it just isn't. And I just don't understand why the rest of us have to get on with that. Yeah. But this one group of people don't.
It's the weirdness of even if we disagree on some things, we can agree on things that are real. Like it's quite, again, with the media thing, the whole, I don't think I've agreed with Julia Hartley-Brewer on quite a lot of stuff. And obviously we've got through kind of Brexit here, and that divided the nation in a very specific way. But, she said stuff, and even Dominic Raab said something in response to Boris Johnson's comments. It's like, how have we arrived in a world where I'm agreeing with Dominic Raab and Julia Hartley-Brewer on this issue? But it's kind of a level of being able to say, I can agree on this thing, doesn't mean I have to agree on everything. And again, the activists you have to agree on everything or nothing.
Well, exactly. And I think that that's also why, and to bring it into this of like women and gay men who are at the forefront of the opposition to trans rights activism, is that we don't all have to agree on everything. And it's great, that's humanity, that's society. Civilized society is making sure that not everyone has to agree with everybody. But even in this fight against gender ideology, gay men and feminists are coming at it from slightly different angles.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like there's sometimes I do see, and it can go both ways. Sometimes gay men will get quite angry at feminists, and sometimes feminists will get quite angry at gay men because they don't agree on a tactic or something that's being said. And I'm like, yeah, but we want the same outcome. Our journeys are a little bit different with it. And I think that that's okay to acknowledge the nuance of that. Yeah. Because, you guys don't have the strength/safety issue sort of thing. Like and all of those sort of issues that we're dealing with. As I said, the sexuality side of it, of what sort of trans men are being encouraged to do, is just, it's unforgivable. I can't even actually wrap my head around it. Yeah. But yeah, I think that we just have to make sure that there is always a little bit of understanding of, we're not going to agree with each other all the time, but that's okay. I'm sure I've got in terms of this particular topic, I'm sure I've spoken to people who let's say, like, to choose a topic right now, maybe you're completely side with Putin, let's say. I don't like the man at all. Let's say I'm interacting with someone, I don't know that side of them, but they are just someone who acknowledges that men and women can't change sex, like no human being can. And that's all we're talking about. Well, I'm going, oh, I'm dealing with a person who lives in reality. That's really cool. I know where you stand there. Yeah, then if we had a conversation about a different topic, I'd be like, oh, I really don't like you.
Yeah.
But that's life. I wouldn't want them wish anything bad on them or anything. I'm just like, okay, we don't agree with that stuff. Cool.
I think that's one of the drivers for wanting to do. I mean, they're going to become more than this, but these sorts of conversations and the sorts of women I've got these lined up with to begin with is what are the other perspectives that gay men, either who are in this fight, need to know, because we are coming at it from a different. We're late to the party. Like you say, the lesbians spotted this a long while ago. And although there's like the LGBT community, there's not a community. Lesbians and gay men don't interact most of the time because we don't need each other most of the time, but where our rights and issues do overlap, we are on the same team and we have the same fight. But this has been one where it's affected lesbians and women more, and so it's been seen sooner. So I think the I'm really keen for more gay men to hear what lesbians in particular, but women in this have to say, and what the perspective is, to understand why, okay, you don't think it's an issue for you because you aren't a physical threat if a trans man comes into the men's toilets or men's changing room, or men's sport, although they're not, they're staying in women's sports.
And the sporting thing, it's not even an issue. It's just, I mean, proves everything, but no one seems to be acknowledging this.
And I think also there's then the other group of gay men that it affects are the kids who are going to grow up to be gay men, who, and I think that's another angle I think that gay men need to kind of get, is these may not affect you now, but you have almost a responsibility to the gay men in the future. I mean, all kids are going to grow up to be LGBT, but that's the group that's going to be impacted. And
I suggest everyone do this, because a quick Google search will confirm this. Transition and conversion are synonyms of each other. And I actually think this needs to be spoken about a bit more. I Googled it recently because I just thought, I was like, I wonder if they actually are officially synonyms. They are. Transitioning young kids is conversion therapy.
Yeah. Well, that's what my sign said.
Pardon?
That's what my sign said at the protest on Sunday.
Yeah. They're the same word in this context.
Yeah.
And that, I don't speak out about this particularly too much because, I'm not homosexual. I don't feel that I have enough knowledge in this thing. Like I very much speak about like female spaces, then I sort of venture into female sport occasionally because it's just so goddamn obvious. But I just, actually right now in Australia, so it's the 15th of April, so everyone has a context. And so Kath Davies, who has, a lot of people on Twitter would know her, she set up Save Women's Sports Australia, and she's been running for Parliament. And the media and the activists have found her old tweets about conversion therapy, basically this transition being conversion therapy, and she's called it mutilation. And so things that she said, like that she's quite triggered at this point by seeing the rainbow flag because of what it's like come to mean, like this new version of it and everything. And so she is being absolutely dragged through the mud here right now. And I've been talking to her and I'm just like, just weather this storm, because what she's done is she's put it on the front page news. She's brought this whole mess to the forefront of everybody's mind. And I think that any rational, sane, compassionate adult can look at when they actually find out what's happening to children, will go, oh, this is wrong.
Yeah.
You have to be sinister to go, oh, this is a good idea.
Yeah. Or just deluded. I think there's a group that's so far, they've convinced themselves of the mantras and the be kind or whatever the reasoning is, that they kind of refuse to acknowledge it or really think about it, maybe because if they do, they know they're going to see how wrong it is, and so they can't open that box.
It's because I don't understand it, because even knowing that we have facts and reality on our side, I still check in with that every day.
Yeah.
I go, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right side of history here? Is this the direction that we want to go in? Am I saying or doing something that is actually really harmful and wrong?
Yeah.
Like, no. I've not seen I've not seen one shred of evidence that getting 13-year-old girls have mastectomies is a good thing, or putting young boys who like to play with girls' toys on puberty blockers is a positive thing.
Yeah.
Not one piece of evidence. And now, like, trans doctors and psychologists are coming out and saying, oh, there's a problem here.
Yeah.
And they're being called transphobic. And I'm just like, I've just never seen anything like it. My dad actually, like, we'll talk about all this stuff, like in this new world of political discussions that we have. And sometimes, like, he'll try and be so rational and he'll be like, oh, like, this is what someone needs to say to them, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Dad, everyone is saying this to them. This is not normal.
Yeah. The interactions I had on Sunday before getting arrested were, it was really apparent that, and I talked to Graham about this the other day a bit on his channel, about they can't have a reasoned conversation because there isn't reason to what they're saying. So you can say all of the, you can try and say all of the logical, rational, let's set out what we're defining here, because actually there's probably quite a lot we do agree on if we set out what we're defining. We don't want to cause harm to anyone. There are people who need help, whatever. There are people who, living as the opposite sex as adults will help them cope. That's all fine. But for a kind of a core group, or a large core of the kind of gender identity lobby and campaigners and whatever, it's they can't even get past the, can we define things? Can we look at things logically? Because that they have to stick to the, trans rights are human rights. We're just fighting for the thing we're fighting for, and not really.
They have to stick to the ideology, to the script, and then they're policing each other. Like, so if one of their friends goes off script with it, then they police that one just as they would police us. It's like, whenever I look at, I very rarely venture into sort of the TikTok world of this, but whenever I sort of see the videos of them all, and they're constantly policing each other, and these microaggressions and stuff like that. Like, this is just even destroying, just like this ideology is destroying like just what it means to have nuanced relationships with friendships and with people. Because if you have to agree 100% of the time, like, you don't have to agree with me on pretty much anything, but if you don't agree with me on just basic reality, I can't speak to you anymore.
Struggle then.
Everything, because, well, part of it, because I'm just looking at you going, well, you're an idiot, and I'm not going to take your opinion seriously, because I just like, even just today, someone was coming after me on Twitter today saying that, like, about, because I said something about how, like, my human rights are being affected by this human rights complaint, then my human rights aren't being acknowledged, because from my perspective, it's my human right to acknowledge what I see with my own eyes. And I think that's a really important human right. And this person just didn't agree with me. And I just said, I'm sorry, I have to block you now.
Yeah.
Because I've got a quota of stupid I can deal with in a day, and you've exceeded it. And so if you don't care whether or not you're allowed to acknowledge what you see with your own eyes, I don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah.
Like,
have
that opinion. Like, I'm not going to stop you. Have that opinion. I just don't want to interact with it.
Yeah. Kind of coming back, that's what you're saying about in terms of media and the kind of coverage you've had or interviews you've been able to do in Australia, and kind of where the debate's at in Australia. How, I mean, even in the time since first talking to people about doing these videos and actually getting around to starting doing them, things have changed massively, particularly
really rapidly.
What has been the change over the last 6 months to a year, or since you kind of started with Giggle?
Oh gosh,
Where things are going in Australia?
Completely. I mean, so when I first sort of got brought into this, it was February 2020. There was nothing about it in Australia. That being said, the laws were being changed in stealth. It was happening behind the scenes, but just in terms of it being news or something anyone was talking about in society, I had no idea. And then 2020, as the year progressed, it's when I did see a few things like, say, women like oriented podcasts and things on their Instagrams that they would start calling like women menstruators and things like that, or like vulva owners. And I was like, I already was being educated and sort of involved at this point, so I was like, fuck you, no. And but no one else in the country really cared. It was still sort of this like, be kind, be kind, be kind. And it's been that way just in general society for the whole time until, I'm not even kidding, about 4 days ago.
Yeah.
Like this, because we've got a federal election that's just been called.
Right.
And that Claire Chandler, Liberal, our Conservative Party is called the Liberal Party, which is very confusing when you're trying to talk about it. But she's so let's just call her a Conservative senator from Tasmania, but she's the one that's introduced the Save Women's Sports bill here. And so a lot of people have gone, like when it first happened, was like, this is a non-issue, like what's going on? Not realizing how much of an issue it is, especially at an amateur sports level. I didn't even realize how much of an issue it was just in recreational sports, but it really is, because the numbers of people especially self-IDing as women, men self-IDing as women, is quite big in Australia. Yeah. In certain pockets of the country. It's just had no real mainstream attention. And it's why, for example, like the human rights complaint against me has gotten some attention, and we're sort of pushing for it to get more. But the liberal left press, they won't even touch it. They won't acknowledge that this is happening. Yeah. I hate it because it's proving my dad right, and it really bothers me because like he would always talk about this, like, the liberal agenda with press, and I was like, that doesn't exist. What the hell are you talking about? I have a master's degree in journalism, and I got I graduated from that in 2006, I think, and so I was trained as a journalist, and that you were supposed to just seek the truth and talk to sources. So it didn't. Yeah. I just always thought that he was talking absolute nonsense, but then I'm actually experiencing it.
Yeah.
That
I got my BA journalism 2006.
Oh, no way.
And I've done in-house publications and communications type jobs, but I've never, other than kind of student radio, student magazine, quite a lot of stuff at uni.
Mine's all been freelance. Yeah.
But the whole, I kind of want to be invited back to kind of do the talk to first years at my old university, kind of in a seeking the truth it really matters, and the whole, it was a big part of what we had a whole unit on ethics and how to do it. And it's kind of how, obviously not everyone who's working in journalism is a journalist, but not everyone who's working in journalism will have had that kind of training. But even if you come up through the newsroom, there's, it's how and why are the media prepared to knowingly lie?
Yes, well, even just this week, so Kat Davies, basically, she's running for, now I'm having like a baby brain moment. I can't actually remember what it is that she's, a parliament seat, but in New South Wales. Anyway, she, it's just been absolutely torn apart because she cares about the welfare of children and women. This is literally her crime. And so I emailed this one particular journalist from news.com.au who is really just going after her. I emailed them and I was like, here, because just this week, the LA Times and the New York Times released articles about this, literally with words like sterilization and mutilation in them. And I was like, this is happening. It's just worth acknowledging that. And I know that, and it's a woman. I know she's received the email. But she's just doubling down on it. And I find it really interesting because also she had been getting attacked on Twitter 2 days before by call it the woke mob, because she just sort of criticized the lefty candidate. And so I feel like there was this, oh, okay, hang on, well, I'll go and I'll bring in the gender ideology stuff to get my woke credentials back or something. That's the cynical part of me that is watching what is going on.
The tribalism thing, I think there's a political landscape shift in terms of tribalism. Like, although there's the accusation of, well, you're just right wing, and there's still a left right thing, it's not really, we're not really divided left right in the way that left right from an economics point of view would have been in the past. The UK obviously has been a very big Brexit split.
Yeah.
But then now it's that this is a kind of a, in terms of the culture wars thing, that split or that tribalism of, you know, are you going along with the woke or are you not?
It is weird because the tribalism thing obviously exists. You can see it, but at the same time, as we were saying before, like, we can be having a conversation about gender ideology where we all agree, like, this is a problem that we need to fix because male and female categories of human beings are real and need to stay established as such. And within that group, you can have people who believe in wildly different things, have very different politics, very different religions, but we agree on just this one part of reality. So in that sense, I've met like people that I probably would never have been friendly with or learned from and listened to. And so I'm really grateful for it. But then, on the other hand, just if you say the one thing wrong, like men can't be women and you're the devil and this other tribe will come at you. It is bizarre.
Yeah, I think thinking about it now and kind of links back to what we were talking about earlier with the tribalism of the LGBT community. It's kind of you're either defending it or you're attacking it, and you can't have a view.
That's part of, I think, what is so scary, and it is for me, like, as I said, so I'm not like homosexual, so it feels very uncomfortable sometimes, like when I'm talking about like the LGBTQ plus alphabet, whatever, like, I don't even know the order of all the letters, who can remember all of these, but I feel so uncomfortable criticizing it because I am so for these rights, and I have so much respect for the LGBT community of what that was, and I don't have respect for the letter Q. I don't.
I mean,
I don't want to say the word. I don't have.
Yeah, it's. I get an amount of reclaiming a word, and there's obviously other.
Yes, women have done it all the time with words. We've always reclaimed words, but
I think if it weren't for the fact that it rhymed, it wouldn't have been like the "we're here, we're queer, get used to it." If it weren't for the fact that rhymed, we probably wouldn't have used that quite so much. Maybe, I don't know, but it's been. I think this is definitely a generational thing. I'm not even sure what the age cutoff point would be, but there are those of us who remember having that thrown at them. That is an abusive slur that we've.
No, totally. It's like how with TERF, how women we have this complicated relationship with it, because every time we see it from these activists, it's usually accompanied by some sort of violent threat. But then we are trying to reclaim it, and so we'll go, oh yeah, we're TERFs, and it's like, because we're trying to soften the blow, because we can't soften the death and rape threats. So you can try and take the new meaningless word and just that they're trying to make into a horrible thing and render it meaningless, or turn it into a positive thing so that it has some influence. It's just something, because I mean, that's what they did with suffragette, was a slur.
Yeah.
And they reclaimed it. So I don't have a problem with reclaiming words. It's just, I don't actually think that's what's happening, because with the Q word, it's being used by heterosexual people. So it's not like it's like, for the most part, homosexual men using it.
Yeah. It's almost kind of gone back to an original use of just, that's a little bit odd. It's more than a little bit odd. but it's like it's straight people who just feel like they're not kind of, they don't want to fit into what's seen as normal, and so that's how they label themselves.
I was reading this article the other day, and it was about this couple that call themselves a Q couple. They're a heterosexual couple, but they both identify as non-binary. And the guy was just wearing guys' clothes, and the girl was wearing guys' clothes. And I was sitting like here on the couch with my boyfriend reading it, and he was just wearing his clothes, and I was wearing his clothes because I'm pregnant, and his t-shirts are so comfy. And then sometimes I just put on his boxer shorts in the morning because again, they're really comfy. And I was like, oh my God, baby, we are an LGBTQ couple right now.
Have a broken exclusive that you're going to come out as queer?
Yeah, seriously, I was just like, I'm like, if we just was someone who just wanted to have a label, we would call ourselves non-binary, and there you go. Yeah. We're just a regular straight couple. Like, it's just so silly. I don't know. That's also part of like there's like all of these labels and everything. And I've had some people come after me trying to say that I'm just as much part of identity politics because I do something that's just for women. But I'm like, I don't think I am, because women isn't an identity.
Yeah, and that's it. And this is the thing that I've had lots of conversations with. I know a lot of gay men and lesbians have talked about, particularly on social media. Your sexual orientation is not an identity. It's part of your identity of who you are and a thing, but it's not an identity. Being male, being female isn't an identity. That is just I think that the whole labeling thing has been about understanding rather than, or in the past it's been understanding who you are and who you're attracted to and whatever. Whereas now it's the policing of your language. It's what subcategory you're in. It's that kind of thing.
Like I wouldn't say that like being heterosexual is part of my identity. It's just part of who I am, what I am.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And like I mean, my best friend is a lesbian, but I would never go like my lesbian best friend. Like she's just my best friend. I don't know what else to say. Yeah. So yeah, I think that like sometimes I will say this actually. In the last little bit, I've seen it ramping up of gay men in this mess, in this debate, who are fighting against gender ideology. I think it's starting to get a bit crueler because there's more gay men starting to get involved in it. But at the same time, the indoctrination of what's being told to trans men is amping up as well. And so that clash. But I just think that the gay men, trans men clash is going to be very different to the trans woman clash, because on both sides, so the men of the males against the feminists have been winning for a long time. But I think the males and the trans men, homosexual men thing, the males will win on that one, because society is sexist.
Yeah,
and I think favors male voices. That's at the end of the day.
Came back to right at the beginning in terms of the it should, like, I know there's some people who we've got multiple different people taking multiple approaches to a common enemy, but there are people almost complaining, isn't really the right word, but complaining about why aren't people just listening to the women who are saying this? And it's like, unfortunately, in terms of the gay community, it's going to be the gay men that need to get this for the wider community to shift. And in terms of politics, unfortunately, we've got to get the men in politics to understand this, and some of them aren't going to listen to women. We need to peak more men so that they 100%. Can other men.
That's just the reality. I'm like, because that's one of my things is like a big thing in society is we need to make sure that women are listened to. But before we can have that fight, we need to get people to remember what a woman is.
Yeah. And
the people that are ironically going to, I think, get that across the line is men. I think it's dads caring about their daughters' sport and female-only spaces are going to make people listen to it, because every time a woman speaks up about it, we're just hysterical, apparently. It's soul destroying. But like my boyfriend, when he goes away for work and is in a like sort of very manly, masculine, male-only profession, and he talks to all of the guys there about all of this stuff, and like unanimous, it's 100% agreement.
Yeah.
Which is that, just regular everyday guys going like, what? Of course, like if there was a man who wanted to go into my daughter's change room I'd make sure he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the more men in general who wake up to what is happening, the better. But at the same time, and this is one of the things I've been talking about in my podcast, is gender ideology in this trans women or women, and this misogynistic attack on women that does have some support from women, like couldn't be possible without that support, because you need to infiltrate it for, sort of the sort of virus to spread something. And I'm like, these women, like just this week, even watching like the reaction to the JK Rowling UK feminists lunch, and seeing the women pile on about it, like on Twitter for the woke points. I was like, what the stuff that you're saying and how you're critiquing these women, you clearly don't know what we stand for. You don't know what the feminists are fighting for, because you've been lied to.
Yeah.
It's like, none of us are saying we want anyone dead or to not exist or anything. In fact, like we're saying, do you need third spaces? Is this something that's really needed?
Yeah.
Because if there is a real genuine safety issue, well, let's create them straight away. Let's get on that.
Yeah. It's like with the conversion therapy debate and like stuff I was doing, helping out with LGBT Alliance last year, and then they were looking at having some kind of campaign around it, and went with kind of end conversion therapy, because nobody wants anyone to go through conversion therapy, but you've got to define what you're talking about. But it's kind of a part of that, and I mean, for me, definitely personally, it's any child who has any kind of gender dysphoria or gender confusion or any kind of issue should absolutely be able to have, as soon as possible, the best kind of psychologist therapy sessions, care to understand what their issues are and support them however that's going to go. But it's they're fighting against something that's not actually what we're saying.
100%. I'm like, if you've got a child that has gender dysphoria and it is causing them significant distress, please take them to therapy immediately. I just want to make sure that that therapist is going to just talk to them. I'm pretty much against medicalizing young children in general, like pretty much across the board with lots of stuff. Like, I don't love the idea of giving kids Ritalin and things like that. I just like, one of my, like a really good family friend is a neurologist, and he was just like, nah, we don't give that sort of stuff to developing brains. You let brains develop. Yeah. If you have a kid that isn't focusing, go and find that passion and get them stimulated that way. Just find out how the brain works and, educate it and treat it accordingly. Yeah. So I'm just very much like, just like, let's just not medicalize kids. And you know what? Let's not medicalize adults if we don't need to.
Yeah. I think the kids thing, I don't have kids. I've got 6 nieces and nephews, and I'm the kind of, with my 2 younger sisters, I'm that supportive uncle who's like, you're parenting wrong, let me help you. But fortunately, both my sisters, we've talked a lot about this, and they homeschool their kids. And when they first took them out as well, only the oldest one was at school at that point. When they first started looking at homeschooling, I was kind of, this is going to be really bad. And now I couldn't be happier that they're not in an education system.
Honestly, I'm just over 2 months from having a baby. And if this stuff is still happening in 5 years, I can't even believe I'm saying this, but she will be homeschooled. Yeah. I'm like, but even like, and I work from home and blah, blah, blah. So in terms of her like infant life, she's going to be with me all the time. But eventually in the next few years, she'll have to go to like kindergarten for socialization. But it is, which one is she going to? Because I don't want gender identity stuff to be at kindergarten.
Well, that'll be your next enterprise. You'll have to open like a chain of giggle kindergarten.
Oh, just such a nightmare. But actually where I live, there is one or like girls only school. And I always actually was, this is kind of ironic because now what I do, and I have a female only app, but I was always like questionable about girls only schools. Just I thought, but isn't it a good idea to grow up together and sort of learn how to interact with each other? But there is so much data about how it actually is better for the learning environment to be separate for boys and girls. So like, I'm not opposed to it. And I'm just like, it is now in my mind that maybe like if it is a kind of gender identity stuff is not in this particular school. So I'm like, okay, well, that would be where she would go. But having to make sure that you're just sending a kid to a school that is just not going to be taught absolute nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, again, I'm not a parent, and I can very easily say what I think about how people parent. But
Yes.
I'll see, like, saying about not medicalizing kids, I see like kids whose parents have pierced their ears or are pushing a pram and smoking, and like those kids don't stand a chance. And I'm really
do you
just
know what though? No, do you know what though? It's so funny you even just use the ear piercing thing. I was talking to my brother and his fiance about this today. So I said, I have a big thing about parents who pierce their kids, like their babies' ears, because I got my ears pierced when I would have been 7 or 8, but it was the process of like asking mom and dad if I was allowed to. And then finally I was like, it must have been like about 8. And it was like, yes, now you're old enough. And we can like, and they took me to the place to get it done. And I got to choose the earrings. Blah, blah. And it was like the first thing of like that thing of on my body and me that I did. And there's like a rite of passage about that. And I see little babies with ears pierced. I'm like, no, you've just taken something from them.
Yes. And I think it's that element of you're doing this to a child rather than it being a decision the child has made. And I think that's, again, it's the precursor to what is now my child's my accessory, and I'm going to make them a trans child because that gives me points.
No, completely. Like, because I even have this thing, like I'm having so much fun at the moment buying baby clothes. I just think they're the cutest little thing. But I actually really don't like baby clothes. I do really like babies that look like they're wearing like adult clothes. Like I bought like little baby jeans and then like these really cute little like t-shirts and like really funky little jumpers, like sweaters and stuff for her. And like she got her first trucker hat the other day because it was just like the cutest thing I've ever seen. And like it's just stuff that like basically I would wear, but it's baby size. I think so cute. And because I've been saying to everyone, I'm like, I figure I've got 18 months where I can dress her however I want. And she is like my little doll and I'm going to have so much fun with it. And then she's going to start developing tastes and a personality, and she will insist on what she wants to wear, and I will let her. That is her journey in life, and that is fine. And if I have to go out in public with a child dressed in 2 different shoes and, you know, whatever ridiculous costume that is in from Pixar at that particular point, cool, I'll do it. I don't care. That's all part of it. But it's all part of like letting her make her choices. My thing, because I've had some like really horrible people on Twitter say to me, you know, oh, like, I hope that, either they hope that my daughter is trans or that they don't hope she's trans, either one. It will always be followed by insults towards me. And I'm like, my daughter can dress however she wants, but she can play with whatever toys she wants and has whatever tastes. She will know very firmly what reality is. That's my job as a parent. Like if she comes to me and says like up is down, I've got to say no, it's not. And if she comes to me and says I'm a boy, I've got to say no, you're not. I
was going to ask in terms of the I mean, you've touched on it already really, but that kind of, how have things shifted for you in knowing you're going to become a mum?
Hugely, because when like just for example, the day that the Human Rights Commission sort of rejected our initial response to the human rights complaint. So I knew that it would be then going to conciliation, which I also knew that I would refuse to do. I sat here and thought about it, knowing also that in refusing conciliation and those terms, basically the next step is federal court. And so that the next year, 18 months of my life could be doing that as well. And I was like, God, is that something I really want to do? And my answer was like on just every level, yes. And because you know, part of it was like, I'm going to have this new baby and it's going to be like this first part of her life I could be in court. But I was like, but I have to do it for her, because I have to do it for my own company. First of all, I have to do it for my own rights. I have to do it for all of the other women's rights in this country. But then I am going to have this little girl, and I don't want her to ever be in a situation where there is a male person in her space and the law sides with him. that her saying, hey, I'm really uncomfortable with you being here, that would be a hate crime. No, that's not cool. I want to teach her boundaries and that she's allowed to say no to things, and that teach her that, yeah, you know, in the reality of the world that we live in, that has always existed and it's probably not going to change, there's certain things you have to do to protect yourself. And one of those is having places where you can go where you are safe. And at the moment, they are all being eroded. So yes, knowing I'm going to have a daughter is, I mean, it's kind of like the screenwriter in me was like, oh, what a perfect plot point in the movie that while this is all happening, suddenly I'm having a daughter. It's almost like it sort of feels fictional, like it's sort of too perfect. You know what I mean? But it made it even more personal. That being said, I'd still be making all the same decisions that I'm making now if this wasn't part of my reality. Yeah. It just is, and it does make you think about it in a different context. Like sometimes, like with this male person who has brought this complaint on and against me, and I say against me because he actually did the human rights complaint against Giggle and me personally. So there was like sort of those two ways there. And so I don't know if something was filed in federal court, I don't know if it would be against like the company and then also against me personally. We'll wait and see. But, you know, you can have moments where you can be kind of intimidated by them. And then I remember like, no, because I wanted to protect my daughter as well. Yeah. And it's funny how that takes like any kind of intimidation that you might have once had out of the equation. You think differently about it. Like it is like the mama bear instinct kicks in.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I've had conversations about this obviously since the thing on Sunday, but they're just not being intimidated. I've done having bullies in my life many years ago, both at school and then in a workplace, and I don't stand for it. And like when I've managed teams and anything that's come up against my team, it's like, no, you don't even go there. But it's the tactic of the opposition. It's don't have the debate, and then if people are trying to shine light on stuff, shut them down, and it's the intimidation tactics to do that. And it feels like we're going through a period of that side of things, testing different ways of intimidating. And then when you know, calling someone a transphobe doesn't work, they move on to the next thing. When that doesn't work, they move on to the next thing.
When transphobe doesn't work, they call you a racist.
Yeah,
that's the order of it. And then I don't know what the next one is.
Getting arrested or whatever it is that shuts down things that cause the intimidation. I think it's like I think that's one of the biggest messages I feel that all the different parts of this on our side can be consistent in, is that we're not going to be intimidated. That doesn't mean people should be taking risks at all, but within their realm or their sphere of stuff, it's countering that intimidation.
I think so. I think you just have to walk through it with, you're sort of in survival mode quite a lot. Like even just little things. I self-censor on Twitter. Of course I do. But how I look at it, like there's a lot of Twitter's rules that I completely disagree with, and you know how they're kicking people off left, right, and center. But I just look at it that I'm in their territory. I run a social network. I have rules. You can't be male. I kick you off if you are. Yeah. So I'm like, when I'm on Twitter, I very much use, there's some things I don't say on there. Yeah. I've never said trans women aren't women on Twitter.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to lose the platform.
Using male and female, and how you are doing stuff, you're within the rules. Because if you're not, there is that ridiculous thing of if you're not there, you aren't going to be able to be heard. And although it's not real life, and I think there is an element to it. I agree with, and I've posted the clip of Posey Parker saying, do not argue with trolls on Twitter. It doesn't change anyone's mind. It doesn't go anywhere.
I don't. That's one of the reasons I actually get very few complaints about my account. I get reported very infrequently. And it's because I don't care about the trolls. In a lot of ways, I think that a lot of the young, very confused foot soldiers on Twitter are victims of this. Yeah. They've been brainwashed. So I actually have quite a lot of empathy for them. Yeah. care about, like, I mean, I'm blocked by him, but I care about like the Owen Jones of the world, because he's pushing it. He is doing the brainwashing. I care about like Nancy Kelly.
Yes.
Like they're the ones who bother me. And then like in Australia, I don't actually really know who's the equivalents of it who are pushing it here yet. It is very much international people. I don't think we really have our own homegrown versions of it.
Yeah. The other thing I'm going to hopefully tweet when I've finished it today or this week, almost like an axis of knowing the truth and believing the lies, and kind of how ingrained this is in you and how like surface level this is for you. And you've got they believe it and it's really ingrained. That's the kind of pink head activists that are delusional. But then yes. Stonewall are in the group of it's really ingrained in them, but they know the truth. They're kind of they're deliberately lying.
Of course they are. They don't believe this for a second.
Yeah.
They just, what I find is so insulting is that places like Stonewall, who did such amazing work, right, could have taken their business model and just taken it to the other countries that didn't have the LGBT rights yet, and make sure that gay marriage and homophobia, take homophobia away and bring in gay marriage.
Yeah.
And it'll be cool. I was talking to an Indian filmmaker this week, and she informed me that like gay marriage is not legal in India, right? So in 2018 that being homosexual stopped being illegal. But self-ID is coming in.
Yeah, the whole where Stonewall could have gone. I mean, hopefully there's an element of what the LGBT Alliance can do once they're kind of out from under the constant attacks. But I think and this is another, again, I'll have to think about doing a whole of the video with someone on this. What gay men particularly don't realize is that the movement now is not just riding on the coattails of 2 decades of lesbian, gay, and bisexual people doing what they were doing with Stonewall and the fantastic things it's done in the past. It's not just that it's riding on those coattails for something else, it's that it's doing it, that something else is against the original kind of purpose. It's not just adding to another group building on that success and applying that. It's actually damaging the original group.
Chase Strangier, whatever their name is, the UCLA Transmen lawyer who sprouts absolute nonsense. Just today did a tweet going on about and called it same-sex marriage, about how much work they did to bring same-sex marriage. And I was like, no. You're like, no. You don't get to sit there and claim this when you spend the rest of your time saying there's no such thing as biological sex. Because you're undoing, yes, you may have done brilliant work, but you're undoing it all now. So what praise do you want?
It's just there's a level of not knowing your own history for a lot of younger, particularly gay men. Like, I don't know how the myth of Marsha Johnson throwing the first brick became such a big thing, and then that Marsha was actually a trans woman, and the whole, how do you not, like, it doesn't take a lot to actually Google, find the video of Marsha talking, and A, not being there, B, knowing full well he's a man. But it's easier to kind of go along with what the kind of cult leaders of Stonewall and the rest of them are feeding you. And
and they're all doing it. Like, for example, like Stonewall, I don't think they would have gone all in on this if they sort of had other stuff to do, but their mission was kind of complete when gay marriage came in. Even though, like, there's still homophobia in society, but in terms of in law, it's like, no, you can't be homophobic.
I mean, the stuff they could have been doing, like I've tweeted about, the Rainbow Laces campaign has been going for over a decade, and we have no Premier League footballers who've come out as gay, and they clearly must be some. So it's a complete failure of a campaign as far as having an impact on Premier League football in the UK. There are things Stonewall could have done, and like you say, the international thing, definitely, it's kind of even from a business model point of view, they could have raised money for an international agenda.
And gone and implemented all of the great stuff is positive and proven to be brilliant and better for society. They could have put this into all of these countries where homophobia is still just leading the way. They didn't. They decided to bring back homophobia. It's because it's the only way that they can continue to have any sort of power and income. Like Nancy Kelly wouldn't say the stuff she says if she wasn't getting paid to say it. And that's what they're just getting increasingly crazy, the stuff she's saying, because you've got to constantly say crazy stuff because she's not talking about the truth. Like for us, sometimes I feel like we must be really boring because the truth doesn't change.
Yeah. And
so it's like, how many exciting ways can I say males are males, females are females? It's just like, oh, God, it's like anytime anyone says that I'm brave, I just feel like such a fraud. I'm like, saying women don't have penises should be a nonsensical statement. This is not a brave thing to say. There's actual brave people in the world. I'm not one of them. I should say women don't have penises and anyone should go, have you had a stroke? You might need to go to hospital. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Not, oh, bravo.
Is that weird kind of, and this is again, what even in the last few months, as more light is shone on this and there is more coverage of it, is moving in that right direction. More people are becoming aware, but like the people kind of might know a little bit and therefore they're going along with saying the right thing, or they just don't know at all. So when I was being booked in at the police station and the arresting officer was telling the desk officer like what had happened, and he said about, and this group of transsexuals, and they said that I'd said something about this transsexuals. I'm like, I don't want to interrupt you, but they wouldn't have said that. They'd have said transgender. And you clearly don't know what either of those mean and what the difference is and what their actual agenda with this is.
Yeah.
You're arresting me for something. Like the level of I think there's a level of definite capture in things like the police being Stonewall champions, whatever. But it's not because they believe the ideology, it's because they want to score whatever points they want to score.
Well, because it's like, but that's more like on the management side of it. You still just got everyday police officers who are living their lives who are not involved in this at all. You have absolutely no idea. But if you found this, I have that, you being arrested and like me having the human rights complaint, it's just actually made me more empowered because I'm like, essentially the worst thing that you could have done has happened in a way.
This is why we're talking now. I've actually pulled my finger out and got on with booking people in to get these recorded, having talked about it for 4 months. Yeah,
that's what I'm like, well, I may as well just, because I've actually, while I've been quite outspoken, I've really tried to be polite for the last 2 years. I've really, really tried, because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or anything. It's not just who I am.
Yeah.
But
actually, I mean, as other people have said about, again, with both describing it and the tweet thread and then talking to Graham about it, with what happened at the protest and just how calm you stayed really calm. And like, I've worked in tourist information and customer services. Like the best thing you can do when someone is losing their shit is just stay calm and reasonable with them. Because if you react, that's what they want, is to have a fight because they're angry about something. Rightly
that's
or wrong.
Why I just don't really interact with them.
Yeah. Well, I just blocked on Twitter, so I've got the blockchain extension, so I've blocked thousands. And if I suddenly get a pylon of trolls, I block everyone who follows them and just shut it down. Yes,
I have blocked majority of trolls. I think, there's always new ones, but I curate my Twitter experience as much as I possibly can. But it's just it's when it is the powerful ones, when it is like the journalists or the influential voices that are going to be listened to. I obviously don't block them, because I'm like, no, we are the one, but we have to be able to have conversations here.
I think it's the don't engage, like we're saying about with the Posey Parker advice about don't, but I think then the next level out from that is that there are people watching, and I know Helen Stanland talks a lot about this. It's not the person you're engaging with, that you're not trying to change anyone's mind, but there are people watching. I think that's the decision, is this an account that has the followers who aren't really engaged in this, who will see some of this? Because if it's just trolls that are following them, they're not going to change their minds. But actually,
it's like that's like the bigger accounts. Like, say, for anyone who isn't yet blocked by, say, Owen Jones, like it is good to push back on the crap that he says because of the people watching there. Or like some of like sometimes it's when it's comedians that weigh in and like trying to make funny jokes. It's usually sort of the punchlines usually die turfs or something, and haha, hilarious. No, like push back on that, because they're completely ill-informed. Like I found that a good time when that was happening was with the Dave Chappelle stuff. Because you had all of these comedians and whatnot coming out against him, and it was like, oh, this is just such an open goal to be, because it was just like what Dave had said was so eloquent and beautiful, and then you could just go and like back him up and have other people see that you're like, because one of the things that I am very conscious of as well in my behavior with it all is I never want to do anything that would give like someone evidence that maybe the trolls or these horrible activists are right. So I don't lose my cool. I'm not hateful. I don't behave badly.
Yeah.
I don't do anything that would give them any kind of ammunition.
Yeah.
Because when if they were telling the truth about me, I wouldn't know how to react to that. They're just saying lies. So it's, in a way, it's okay.
Yeah.
But
and I've been more like that. I think, or tried more like that and failed. But in the past, I've changed a few times how I engage on Twitter. Like I would have gone through when there was whatever anniversary and Pride stuff. Anyone who's mentioned trans person through the first brick, I'd be going like, actually they didn't. And here's the link why. And it's kind of, that's not changing their minds. That's a complete waste of time. But like how engaged or how you engage with them. And like I've been, I guess, critical of some others on our side, or the approach, not individuals, but the approach in terms of our side of like, let's not waste our time telling everyone how disgusted we are about a thing or how offended we are about a thing, because that doesn't change the law.
I also don't care about being offended. That's the thing.
Everyone
I don't
has the right to be offended. I don't.
Like as I said, like there can be sometimes like I can see, like what a man is wearing claiming that he's a woman, and it can feel sort of offensive, but then when I'm like, explore your emotions more, because that's kind of irrelevant. Being offended doesn't bother me. It's too subjective.
Yes, I think that's there's a definite understanding of, particularly for different, more so on the women's side of the fight than the same-sex orientation side of it, where that harm that's happened and the anger has come from is entirely understandable. And that's what I want to do in some more of these videos is kind of talk to people about why that's come from and why you're not going to necessarily understand that as a gay man who isn't a trans widow, and understanding that. But then there's and you have every right and need to tell that story, but that's not the thing that's going to change the law.
That's not what's going to peak. It's what what peaks people. It's different for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because for me, it was just being brought into my own reality. It was just being called a TERF and going, I don't even know what that is. I had to go and research it. And then at the time I remember because I was getting these accusations of transphobia, and I was like, no, I'm not. What are you talking about? And I was like, kind of responding, going like, no. And I had people say like, some of these activists, and they'd be like, well, do you think trans women are women? And you sort of go like, oh, of course. Because when you're in that duress at that moment, you just want to like sort of agree with the ones who are trying to take you hostage so that they don't, it's just like, let me go. I agree with you, take my money kind of thing. And then when I sat down and researched it, honestly, it took minutes. It was, for me, it was the two things that made me go, okay, whoa, was the sexual coercion and abuse of lesbians, and the abuse of women who are working to end female genital mutilation, who get abused for using the word female.
Yeah. I think that it's that, again, what is the thing that's going to pique different people? And I'm wanting to look more at what are the things that are going to pique gay men in the...
I think, to me, because I feel I can see it happening, is the females being told to give blowjobs in stealth. Like, gay men have to stop and go, surely all gay men are going to go, hang on, wait. What the hell? And also straight men, everyone is going to see that and go, oh, this is not cool.
I think like even the comments under the tweet, but definitely the comments on the YouTube video of I think they changed the name of it after some of the feedback for the how to give oral sex to trans men video. Majority of the comments on the YouTube channel were what on earth are you talking about? Kind of.
So it has, because I haven't watched it. It hasn't been it hasn't been well received.
No.
Good, because it's going to be interesting though, isn't it? Because of how quickly, if the attempt of attempted sexual coercion of gay men ends this really quickly, then it will prove even more so how much work we have to do with women's rights, because the sexual coercion of lesbians has been happening for years.
Yeah.
And they've been speaking up about this for years and no one is listening. And so, and that's what I say, like, we have to end this nonsense so that we can go back to trying to fix the actual sexism inequality in society.
Yeah, like I remember in some job more than a decade ago, being on some kind of staff thing. There was some working group that was being set up for something, and they were going through the terms of reference, and it was the head of IT that was chairing it. It must have been some kind of IT projects thing. And in the terms of reference, and I'd said about we should be chair, not chairman. And he's like, well, I'm the head of IT. I was like, you might not always be the head of IT. There's a couple of kind of not gender neutral bits of language where they could be, but that was because it could be men or women. And the shift in, I mean, a decade ago or more, where you're talking about gender neutral language to be inclusive of men and women, whereas now the gender neutral language is to erase whether people are men or women.
I was just like, I suppose it's weird because even the writer in me, I never really got that into it. I remember reading things of like, oh, like trying to make, sort of like fireman, it was fire person or whatever. And I was like, 99% of the time they're men, call them firemen.
Yeah.
It just, that didn't really, I didn't really care.
Yeah. I think it's that when it's done in a, it feels awkward to say a thing, like to say police officers rather than policemen is kind of, it doesn't, like it's the way you would say it, it's another way of saying it. Saying fire persons is like, it just feels wrong. You don't like
it just, it does, like they never tried to make fire officer happen, did they? I just think that
but the driver for it now is different, I think, as well. That's the
but also yes, but also one of the things I remember, even like say 10 years ago when there was conversations about that sort of stuff, I was like, we've got real issues. I just was always like, oh, if you, what you call me like in that, it's no, just like there's bigger things, like for example, like just don't rape me.
Yeah.
Can we focus like let's like that? I don't really care about like if I'm called like ma'am or madam or something. Just please, can we, like, there's really other really important things.
Yeah.
So
and those have been put on hold because we're not even looking at any of those sorts of things because of what the focus has now become.
Yeah, I mean, like, because like, there's just like all the different superficial things, and then right now, because all of this stuff is just so superficial about pronouns and what you're wearing and everything. When I left Hollywood, because I was experiencing systematic and just constant sexual harassment and sexual assault, and I wear like boys t-shirts and skinny jeans and Converse. Like I dressed like an aging Christie from the Babysitters Club. And that didn't stop them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was because it was all on the basis of sex, that they knew that they could have some sort of control and power over me.
Yeah.
So I want to fix those problems.
Yeah.
If like someone was just think I was a man while talking to me on the phone, I don't care.
Yeah. How much of that world, how to phrase the question, so in terms of or any industry, but obviously one you have experience of, where there is that sexism and either threat of or actual sexual assault, how much are gay men in that industry aware of or part of? I mean, clearly there's a sexism amongst gay men.
Yes.
I'm wondering how much because they're not for the most part going to be, or they're not going to be affected by that as much as women in that industry are, and they're not going to be the perpetrators of that in the same way that straight men are. So I don't know. I had two, so I mean, obviously I've never had any negative experiences with a gay man, but I had two male actor friends in LA, they were both Australian, who had been sexually harassed by gay male executives and attempted, like, because they had, basically, do you want this role? Yeah. Tra la la sort of thing.
And then neither of them did anything. And so then they were blacklisted. And so,
yeah.
And these were like casting execs. And so for a studio. And so then you don't even get the opportunity to go for an audition at any of the shows that are on that network, and it can destroy your career. So yeah, there's definitely power there. But just for me personally, I didn't obviously experience anything of it.
Yeah.
Totally different circles.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? Like there's all these really real world problems that still exist. Like we were just about to start making headway with them, and then this came along. It's not an accident. It's distracted us all. It's made it impossible to go and talk about those issues.
Yeah, there's again, listening to too many podcasts. Someone this week talking about, I think either a commentator or someone in the States who's talking about the current issue. And it kind of, whatever it is, they won't refer to it. They'll just talk about the current issue because it's going to become something else. COVID was the current issue, and it's the distraction factor. Ukraine is the current issue, or whatever it is.
I mean, in Australia, it felt hard to not be a conspiracy theorist about it, because suddenly COVID didn't exist in a day.
Yeah, and we've moved on to the next
2
thing.
years. It felt odd.
Yeah, and I think it's, I guess, looking at what happens now in terms of how much is the gender debate thing coming to the fore, and will that become the current issue, and then we'll move past that? Or I think, you were talking before we started recording about where Australia's at compared to where the UK is at, what's going to happen next. So what, in terms of what's happened in the last week, where do you see Australia going in the next few months of election and everything?
Because it's like sort of a social issue, and there's so many people who think that it's a fringe issue. People are going to try and always ignore it for as long as possible. Or it's just like, it's just those women and those gay men over there fighting for something. It's not real, blah, blah, blah. Which is why I'm being very conscious, and because this is how I see it, to make sure people realize that, like, if I'm going to court, what I'm fighting for is everyone's right to acknowledge what they see with their own eyes. I don't care who you are. That applies to you. These are real world issues, because if the federal court in Australia says that I am not allowed to acknowledge a man when I see a man, well, then I don't live in a free society.
Yeah.
And what else do I have to not acknowledge? Yeah. So it depends on how this is all being framed. And so I think that obviously, like, while I come at it from the women's rights and female spaces perspective, you're going to come at it from the gay man's perspective. But it affects everyone. And maybe it's just going to be when straight men wake up and go, oh, hang on, wait, this is actually a real thing. Oh, look at that, 2 days over. It's all gone.
Yeah.
Like, because, like, it's like the academics seem to not be able to fix it or anything, because everyone just goes, oh, fuddy-duddy academic elites, you're at university, it's not in real life, blah, blah, blah. But like, and it's not going to be, straight men's sexual freedom or something, or like anything like that is affected, because autogynephilic males aren't going after straight men. So they're not going to be affected in the same way the rest of us are sexually, being affected by this, like how lesbians and gay people are. I think it will just be, one of the ones I actually think about is there's a lot of just like dudes out there who go, I don't want like women and young girls in the neutral unisex bathroom, like while I'm standing at the urinal with my dick out. I don't want them behind me. I'm really uncomfortable with that. So it's like, I'm always like, men, like when I explain that to them, they're like, oh, I don't like that. I'm like, cool, speak up about it. Because we just get called prudes.
Yeah, there's definitely this is the gender critical, or however people describe it, movement isn't a movement. It's lots of different things, but actually that's why I kind of
like, I don't like the gender critical title. I don't like labels in general, but I really don't like the gender critical, because yes, there's a part of me, I'm critical of all of that stuff. That is just one part of this.
Yeah.
I'm acknowledge reality. That's my title.
Yeah. I think the however different aspects of that, our side, as it were, in the debate or the fight are putting things, I think it's the how come I hope more parts of it can take that more strategic kind of it's not just about trying to get the message of what we're saying out, it's about targeting who is in the position of power to make a difference and convincing them, whether that's male politicians or gay men in the LGBT community, or like the things you're just talking about, kind of we've got to, being right isn't enough. We've got to like,
but that's why I'm like, I don't really care what your motives are for coming into it, what you're like. If you agree and you're here because you just want reality to be able to be acknowledged, cool, we have the exact same end goal. So yep, we might disagree on lots of other things, and like you can be dealing with men, I don't, that is totally misogynistic. I do sometimes, when women get a bit shocked that some men that are fighting for this are completely misogynistic, I'm like, just because they acknowledge women exist doesn't mean they like them. In fact, sometimes that's like, it's a real important part of the recipe.
And I've heard men who talk about who definitely agree with reality and are looking for the same end goal, but in the next breath will be like, well, feminists brought this on themselves.
Oh, so much of that.
There's definitely there's elements of that in terms of, if you're talking about how feminism has changed in different waves and where it's not really what feminism was about, there's definitely something that's come out as part of the academic world that's got postmodernism or whatever. But if you're just saying that because it's an excuse to be able to have a rant about women, that's not really helpful.
Totally. If you want to have like a really nuanced discussion about, again, I don't think feminism is identity politics though, because women being female and a woman isn't an identity. So I've struggled to take it seriously. And this whole thing about feminists brought it on themselves. No, actually, I'll defend radical feminists here, because radical feminism, I think, is the most purish sort of feminism. I would actually call it just feminism for the most part. I think that word radical gets in the way. Like I'd drop it. I think it's a bit of dead weight if I was like lead feminist.
Is there an election for that, or is there?
No, I don't. Well, part of it is that there is no like leader, but no, actual feminists didn't bring this on, like real feminists. It's so if it is that there are some women who played a role in this, yes, but they're not feminists. That was the whole point.
And didn't play a role in this just because they're women. They were playing a role in this along with the men who played a role in this. Like it's
I have a big thing.
Blame to point the finger at, but that in itself isn't a helpful thing to do. Like understanding where stuff's come from is useful, but actually it doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah, like I have a thing that I am talking about quite a lot lately of like how like gender ideology is a completely male ideology. And so it's so fascinating and obviously inevitable that it would come up against feminism, and feminism that's been around for like 150 years and change and is just attacked constantly, doesn't get that much respect, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and then gender ideology, a few years in, pounce, winning. And this sort of proves the need for feminism. But I really don't think that there's a woman on the planet that on her own accord would insist for no reason that women have penises. Now, I know there's the likes of Judith Butler, but she did it. Yes, there's the money side of it now, but before that, I mean, she had to sort of go like, she didn't know if it was going to make her any money. Like, because the only reason that she could possibly be doing it is for money and power and some sort of respect. But it's sort of like, I think that it was like throw shit at a wall, see what sticks. She was just sort of this little bit of an exception to the rule.
I don't know how much you've...
She's obviously not talented enough to do anything else.
Yeah, like reading the Helen Pluckrose, James Lindsay and the postmodernism and where stuff's all come from, and that kind of gets quite academic for some people in terms of I'm not really interested in that, but actually understanding that and the kind of the academics who would talk about, well, can a woman have a penis? It's like that hasn't started in a place of we're talking about medical stuff. It's conceptually, if this was just an idea, what could this be? Like that
They're people,
kind of,
the people
there's an
that,
understanding where that's come from, but it's now and I don't think, I haven't read a lot of Judith Butler, but my
unreadable.
assumption of, well, yeah, it's impossible. But that's, I don't know how much it was talking literally or coming from that academic postmodernist, it's a thought experiment type way of talking about it.
It wasn't coming from a serious part of a university. And I say this as someone with 3 humanities degrees. But this wasn't coming from like, the medical or the law departments. It was, someone said to me the other day, it was like, it was people who, they weren't good enough to study anything else. No, they weren't smart enough to study anything else and had to justify the reason to be there. So, okay, well, let's just make utter bullshit serious, which, because someone told me this years ago and I've never forgotten it. Never underestimate how much idiots want to feel smart.
Yeah.
And this stuff is perfect for that. Because if you can sit there and try and like intellectualize the concept of women having penises and use big fancy words to do it, you're still saying stupid, idiotic things, but there'll be a lot of people out there that will like feeling smart as a byproduct, and then they'll elevate you as being some kind of genius and blah, blah, blah.
I've seen Pluckers, I think he's talk about it in terms of you're kind of building this tower of stuff, and actually it's almost rigorous academic points, but the starting point was wrong. So this is all teetering on this wrong assumption at the beginning. So if you jump past that, the rest of it almost feels logical, and actually it's an intellectual discussion, but its foundation is false.
Laurie Penny does that. And sometimes like when Laurie Penny on Twitter will be sort of perplexed as to why is no one agreeing with me? It's like, because your first principle is wrong. And then everything you've said after that is wrong. And you're wondering how you haven't convinced anybody. I also find the likes of Laurie Penny to be really interesting because they have sort of pandered to this audience and get a lot of, I don't even think that much praise on Twitter, to be honest. I don't think that there's that much, there are many accolades for them. But then sort of they write, then they'll go and finally write the book, and then the book is utter commercial failure. And it's that realization of, this audience that you've pandered to doesn't read.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't read books.
Yeah.
Ours do.
I think even
our side, books are becoming bestsellers.
I mean,
there's a reason for it.
Not even having to read a book. It's well, J.K. Rowling said something in that shorthand, because J.K. Rowling is a transphobe. It's like, did you actually read even just the essay she's written on this, let alone anything more analysis of it?
Like,
you haven't even read that level of detail.
I don't even think they've read the tweets.
Yeah. Like
maybe like one, because they'll take one out of context or something. But I'm like, did you read the thread? Like, I mean, I know at this point we're getting into about, 1,000 characters. So it might take you a minute and a half, but because you can't read, unless you've been completely indoctrinated, you can't read any of this stuff and think, like, even like what's happening with Kath Davies in Australia this week, where they're taking these tweets out of context of like sterilization and mutilation of children and things like that. If I didn't know anything about what was happening, and this was my first introduction to it, and I was reading this in the news, to me, because it's sterilization and mutilation of children, that would make me go, I want to read to see what she's actually talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because hang on, am I just going to go outrage that's not happening and go, oh, okay, cool, well, I'll just look the other way then, if you're just insisting that's not happening? Or hang on, maybe there really is something.
Do I need to think for myself and spend 5 minutes reading something and finding out?
Well, just the moment someone says there's children in danger, I think everyone should go, oh, hang on, wait, let's be sure, are they?
Yeah.
And then
can I find out, is this person lying even? Like if it's something presented, it's kind of, there's enough to read it to say, oh, actually this is true, or it's not true, or there's not enough here, and actually it's not just what's being presented, there's more to this.
One of the things that I've been doing with Australians who have been responding to the Kath Davies thing, saying that she's a transphobe and a horrible bigot, blah, blah, blah. So I've just been posting the essays written by Detransitioners. Because I'm like, there's nothing that I can say that is going to make you think differently. But if you actually read this experience, surely you're going to go, hang on, there's more to this story.
Yeah.
Like you cannot listen to a detransitioner story and come out of it going, yeah, there's no issue here.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I'm in touch with a few people to try and do some is conversations with detransition males, because obviously we've heard
I would really appreciate that. I would very much appreciate that, because, and like, don't get me wrong, I want to elevate every detransitioner woman's voice. They're so important, but I know that there's some detransitioner males out there, and this is the one time where it's actually the men are being ignored.
Yeah, I think my assumption is, and from bits of conversation as well, is there's an element of obviously those who will just turn out to be gay men, but even if they're not, and people have talked about that there's going to be a difference between how much kind of shame and embarrassment of what you've done to yourself you're going to have.
James, this is the number one thing, like I think about quite frequently. I think about it quite frequently, that when you are no longer stunning and brave for doing this, and it's no longer the cool thing to do, and we're going to have some people who wake up one morning and they don't have a penis, and I understand sometimes why they have to be so militant, because God, this has to be true. You know what I mean? It's like, if this isn't true.
Susie Green thing with mermaids, that Susie Green has to justify what she's done to her son.
Exactly, because otherwise that you can't even, how do you even process it as a person? And so I understand why there are some men who like have to insist this, because I can't fathom the mortification of waking up. And these well, at the moment are little gay kids, and waking up and going, hang on a second, my body has been operated on, body parts have been removed, my parents either encouraged or at least okayed this. Doctors, all the adults in the room, none of them questioned it, and now I'm a gay man and I don't have any male sex organs.
Yeah, I think the thing we were talking about earlier with the babies and very young children as kind of accessories to their parents, or accessories for their parents rather, and their parents going along with, oh, I've got a trans child or a non-binary child. It's kind of that with that starting so much earlier, and you've kind of grown up as someone who's would have turned into just grow up as a gay man, and you've been raised as a little girl, and then it's even before you hit the point of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, it's kind of how do you question what you've been, all you've ever known?
I think it's particularly evil to tell both vulnerable adults and then also children that it is possible to change sex, and then having them make medical decisions based upon that lie. It's evil, because you can't change sex. So, and that's what the detransitioners say. It's the Kira Bell, like that was the thing that she made me really realize it. She was never told she was going to be a trans man. Yeah. She thought she was going to be a man. And so being a trans man was hugely disappointing. It wasn't what she signed up for. Yeah. Because back in the day, like if we even go back to like the transsexual thing, they said that they knew who they were. And that was like the beauty of it. It's like, and I wouldn't have that much of a problem if it was like, if what was being pushed right now is like, as a society, can we please accept trans women and trans men? Yeah, cool.
And that would be the really easy win for Stonewall. There is an argument for adding the T to what they were doing already, but still being based in reality. But I think and this is one of the things that in the context of what do gay men need to wake up to, is adding the forced teaming of T with LGB is an issue. And I say that as someone who was the chair of the trustees for the LGBT consortium a decade ago, and questioning it even then, or not publicly questioning it, but kind of it's two very distinct, different groups. But within the trans umbrella now, it's not the T that we used to talk about. It's all these different things with different agendas, and one part of that agenda is driving it to be actually seen as being women because it validates them, and that's harming another part of it, that probably shouldn't be under that umbrella at all, because actually they're just going to be gay.
Exactly. Like, it's just, yeah, if what was being pushed and it was like if it was genuinely similar to gay rights in the way it was being done, of just like, can we please accept in society trans women and trans men as adults? I probably would never ever accept it for children. I'd have to have a lot of scientific evidence to accept it for kids, and it's just not there yet. But yeah, I'm like, because if it was just someone being like, can you accept me as a person who likes, a male person who likes to wear women's clothes in public? I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Even if there is I know there's like in the AGP thing, and there's the fetish element and everything, but I'm like, if it was like something that was accepted in society, then hopefully we'd get to a point where there wouldn't be trans widows, and it wouldn't be, we wouldn't have that. Like, if we were trying to find solutions to stop all of that from happening, yes, I'm on board with that. But as I say, that my problem with this fundamentally is being told I have to believe something that doesn't exist, that isn't true.
Yeah.
And that I have to, that if I was to walk into a female only space and I see a male in there, I have to now compute, okay, wait, do I let my instincts kick in for this and for my own safety, or and then at risk of being charged with a hate crime because I've questioned this person's identity, or do I just put myself in danger and hope for the best?
Yeah, I think that's the question for me. Or there's kind of in terms of fighting the ideology, there's a more obvious answer in terms of why it's wrong when males are in female spaces. I think when women are in men's spaces or male spaces, particularly for gay men, it's the extreme. I guess extreme is the going to saunas and bathhouses and not revealing what your actual sex is. But then there's, like you said, do you want women coming in behind you while you're stood at the urinal? I think there was a shift in terms of the gay bars. So the gay bar, or at that time, the one gay bar, briefly two gay bars in Lincoln when I was at university, and it was like right on the outskirts of town, was a drag bar because the owner went from being into leather to being into drag, and so it was drag cabaret bar. But they all knew they were men. There was no question of gender.
I used to go, oh totally. I used to go to drag queen bingo at Hamburger Mary's in West Hollywood. I used to go, I think it was it's either Monday or Wednesday nights, I can't remember.
There were lesbians there as well, and there were some straight girls in terms of people's friends, and there was
funny.
Growing up, I had all female friends, but this bar kind of built an extension to have like a proper big cabaret room and take bookings and do groups, and it became hen parties, and lots of my friends who were in the show dropped out gradually because it went from they're coming and laughing with us to they're coming and laughing at us. And that shift of this is not a awful phrase, safe space, but this isn't a gay male or gay people, male or female, space to feel safe as who we are for a reason, because actually it's now become a spectacle, and there's a different. So I think there has been that kind of conversation in the kind of gay community, for want of a better phrase, of who is coming to gay bars, and the hen nights taking over has definitely been a thing. It's been forgotten now. It's open to everyone.
Totally. I mean, in my early 20s, as I said, I lived in Boys Town. I used to go to gay bars because they were the local bars where we were. And I think there's lots of other women who feel this way. I always felt so safe with them.
Yeah.
No one grabbed my ass at a gay bar.
Yeah, and that's
right.
And Deborah So talks a lot about this, and I would love to chat to her about this in more detail, having read her book. But that shift from women were going to gay bars because they knew they weren't going to be groped by the men there, and then it kind of moved to a point where the gay men didn't want to go to gay bars because the hen nights were groping them, or like the whole.
I get it. I wouldn't want to be around that either. I completely get it. It's like, it makes complete sense, and I have empathy for that kind of stuff.
But that's been a lot in terms of the trans men actually are women trying to pass themselves off as gay men.
There's a trans man. I think it was last season on RuPaul's Drag Race. There was a trans man who was a drag queen, not a drag king. I don't think, like a drag queen.
She was a trans man who then was a drag queen. So it's kind of you're, and they, I mean, I went off RuPaul's Drag Race. I wasn't in it from the beginning. There's a couple of seasons I got into it with a housemate, and then I've stopped.
I got into a few seasons of it as well, because I will say this, right? Some drag performers are so incredibly talented with how they dance and the makeup and the comedy, in terms of just being actual performers, are so talented. I can't take that away from a lot of them.
Well,
They're
it's
brilliant.
shifting well. So I know there's a lot of people who won't agree with me on drag, and I'm kind of still thinking about it shifting, having been in a circle of friends where the bar was.
Oh, look, I can also talk for days about the appropriation of it as well, and how I don't agree with that 100%. I'm just saying, in terms of as talented performers,
I think
it's
that's
like, imagine if you channeled that into something else, or if there was something else, or just
the saying about the performance bit of it. So Bianca Del Rio describes himself as a clown, like it's the pantomime, it's a form. Drag as a performance art is not what RuPaul's Drag Race has become.
100%
of drag. And then I went off it having had a couple of seasons where you've clearly not had the best person win. This isn't a competition, this is just a TV show. But then definitely stopped with if you're going to have a woman come onto the show who claims to be a gay man, not just a man, but a gay man, and then is going to be referred to her as she throughout, because they're all in their drag persona throughout, whether they're in costume or not. How is that not, if she's got gender dysphoria, how is that not massively triggering to be she the whole time?
Well, it's like trans men who have children. It's like trans men who have babies, like not children. Obviously, anyone can adopt or have a child, but like, I mean, like actual pregnancy. I've talked to many trans men about this, like say gender critical trans men, because like I am pregnant right now. It's not for faint-hearted. It's really weird. But one of the things actually about being pregnant that what I've been thinking about a lot lately is it makes you feel like your body is just changing, and it's kind of like puberty in a way. It's completely out of your control. I have no control over what this body does right now. And I was like, the puberty and the gender dysphoria that comes from puberty and everything, especially for girls. And I was like, it's really just part of life, isn't it? Of just feeling alien in our own bodies. It's just something we always have to deal with and work through. We shouldn't be medicating this in any way. We should, it really should be something that we accept. But on the topic of trans men doing it, I honestly don't know how you can claim to have gender dysphoria so badly, and that you are a man and you need to be called a man, because it is so triggering if you are called a woman, but then you can grow a baby for what is actually effectively 10 months. But this is what it all comes down to. Like, don't lie to me about reality. Don't tell me I have to believe it. Like I use the Flow pregnancy app, for example. It's such a brilliant app, except it's completely captured. So I just have to accept that I'm called a pregnant person. Now, this app is obviously for females. It's periods and pregnancy. That's the only two functions this app does. So maybe you might have some males who identify as women on there just putting in random dates so they feel like a woman, and it's like a validation thing. Sure, there could be some users doing that, but the app is created for females. And wouldn't be successful without females using it. And I'm like, this is such a great app that has so many different functions and blah, blah, blah. Couldn't they have just had on the settings screen a thing of choosing like, hey, what's your gender identity? What's the language you want us to use with you? So that if you are one of the, 8 pregnant trans men on the planet who want to be called a pregnant person, okay, cool, the app would speak to you that way. Instead of the millions of us who aren't having to be spoken to that way.
It's exactly what I was thinking with the kind of Grindr and other apps. Other apps are available, but obviously it's Grindr's gone down the road of it's kind of like a Twitter thing, because most people are on it, more people go on it, and then they're used to that's the app that the others kind of set the standard by. But given that you can put in both your gender identity and kind of put in preferences, it's kind of why, if be an app for everyone, but in the same way, Tinder, you obviously put in whether you're looking for men or women if you are a man or a woman, but they haven't gone as far as selecting by your gender identity, but any of those apps could do that. And then
100%.
but
You
the
can
point,
tailor the experience, like,
yeah,
you know, and have like that. Like, I don't have a problem with any app or anything tailoring or just choosing who their demographic is. Like, take the Her app, for example, and Grindr. If they both decide that they want to include the opposite sex in their demographic, that's their choice. They can do that. That's fine. It just creates an opening in the market for somebody else to come along and create the other thing. That's what I'm fighting for. I want to make sure that that you can still do that.
Yeah.
Because for me, I don't have this thing where I'm going, oh, you can't create women and trans women only spaces. Create them.
Yeah.
If there's a market for them, someone for them, create them. I just want female spaces to be able to also exist. That's it.
Yeah. Like with the,
I don't know how much more rational and fair I can get.
Yeah. And I think it comes back to the objective isn't actually to be inclusive. It's about saying everything. So Grindr could very easily have put your settings in that there are males who are interested in males who identify as women. If you could have people put in what their actual sex is and their gender identity and let people filter by that, you could cater for the whole of that market. But it's about making the gay men accept that these females are gay men. It's not about reality. It's about pushing that agenda.
Well, it's because it's like, I don't know what it's like in the trans men community, but these trans women who claim to be lesbians, not a lot of them are going and dating other trans women.
Yeah.
They seem to know exactly who is a biological woman in that context.
Yeah.
So, and that's who they're going after. So it's like they're just proving that biological sex exists and that homosexuality exists and that they're appropriating it.
Yeah.
So I can't take any of it seriously. I've tried to be polite. I've tried to do all of that. No, like enough is enough. This has stolen 2 years of my life.
Yeah.
It's enough. And like, I honestly, the Julie Bindels of the world, I don't know how they're sane. I honestly don't. She's 20 years in.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Hopefully it'll be sooner than that before we see. I think there is, I mean, even in the last few months, the difference where things have moved to, I think it is going to hopefully move it exponentially as more people are aware of what's actually going on. And
I agree.
Yeah.
I think, but I actually completely agree with you, but I talked to 2 women this past week who think that while it might change in terms of the recovery of it is going to take a generation. Yeah, it could be the rest of our lives.
The generations of detransitioners before anything else is going to be a massive impact for years to come. And even into much later into life before they detransition, or there's people who have a lifelong impact of all of this. I think the capture of LGBT charities, like part of me would hope, I can't see it happening, that we do have an LGBT sector and a T and whatever else sector, and it hasn't got to be a forced teaming, or that there are at least more organizations and groups that can be either, rather than having to lump it all together. And I think there will be, but it's not going to get back to the point of it's 2 separate demographics that have rights and campaigns and whatever. It would be great if it could get back to that, but for both groups' sake. I said about taking the sign that I had last week to every pride I can go to, and I think actually the better sign is to have a transgender people deserve their own movement. Like, why force team it? Like, you have your own issues and your own things, absolutely campaign for that, but have that in your own right.
That's like, I say the same thing in the sense of like, well, women fought for our own spaces. Mm-hmm. Go and fight for your own spaces. Yeah. You're not, if you're fighting to take away our rights, and you expect us to just sit back and go, oh, okay. Yeah. And just watching, like in Australia, like just the media right now that is going after women who speak up for our rights, and it's amping up. And either they will come after you, or they'll completely ignore you, or they're the right-wing conservative media and they'll have you on, and you want to be careful that you're not being used as a pawn in whatever game they have or anything, but you also want a platform to be able to speak. I'm just like, you know, it's just so terrifying and so difficult to navigate. And sometimes it's so lonely. It's so, so lonely. And you would never think that just saying something as simple as women don't have penises would be a lonely way to live.
Yeah.
But then when you talk to everybody, the more people you talk to, the more people are waking up, and it is changing. And
I think that's to end on a more upbeat note. I think that is a positive for all the negatives of social media and this whole, the fact that we're having to have this fight. The positive, I think, is that people are connecting, and like you said about people talking to people they would never have spoken to. And actually, I think like we did it a bit last year with the whole gender critical coming out day, and that's not the best name for it. And there's something else that needs to happen if that goes ahead this year or something. But the whole concept of, within the limits of what's safe for you, doing something, saying something, connecting with other people, because actually, like you said about your boyfriend talking to a load of workmates, they all agree. It's like, if you actually talk to people, they all agree on with reality.
That's why I say like sort of the concept of like gender critical coming out day. No, it's just acknowledging reality day.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Because being gender critical, it's kind of like, nah.
Yeah.
Because to me, that feels like you're just criticizing like fashion.
Yeah. Yeah. It has fallen. Like, I think it's part of the downside of shorthand is that we've kind of, I guess, fallen into the referring to the gender critical side of the debate, because it's not one thing, like you say, there's multiple facets to standing up for reality against the gender ideology or gender identity ideology. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how this could play out in a more coordinated way, but it's impossible for it to do that because it's so many different things.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, I know, but I feel like it is in some ways like such a horror movie that if I was watching it, I would have turned this off by now.
Yeah.
But because it's real life, I'll stay and fight for as long as I have to.
Cool. Well,
if I have to go to the High Court of Australia to have it believed that men aren't women, then I will.
Yeah. We're glad you're here and in the fight.
Thank you. We do.
I'm going to wrap up because we've been going for over 2 hours, and I could sit here and talk to you all day, but then I'm not sure.
I could sit and talk forever about it. I know it's crazy, but
we can do it again, and I'm definitely as and when stuff happens with the Human Rights Commission and progressing with that, it'd be good to talk again.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I assume if it goes to federal court, I assume I'm going to have a little bit of a gag order on what I can say about it for a little while, that's going to be the thing that I'll find the most difficult. But otherwise, I will be talking about it as much as I possibly can.
Cool. In the meantime, I'll continue to trade Schitt's Creek gifts with you on Twitter.
They're the best. Well, thank you so much. This has been so awesome.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. This is where I'm supposed to say like and subscribe. So, more people can see this. That'd be great. And I look forward to having another conversation with someone soon. Thanks, Sal.